Hi everyone. Detective Lefebre speaks. Max Carter, an 11-year-old boy with a knack for solving puzzles and equations far beyond his years, left home on a brisk October morning for school. He followed his usual route through his quiet suburban neighborhood, a route he'd taken countless times before. But that day, Max didn't arrive. His absence was reported by the school secretary by 8:30 a.m., prompting his mother, Lisa Carter, to retrace his path. 2 blocks from their home, Lisa found Max's backpack leaning against a lamppost. It was neatly placed, not tossed in a rush, and contained only his school supplies and lunchbox. It wasn't abandoned, it was staged. The neighborhood offered no witnesses, no struggle, no vehicle spotted at odd times. Max had simply vanished, and with the chilling precision of his disappearance, I suspected a premeditated abduction. Lisa's frantic call to the police brought them to the scene quickly, but hours of canvassing the neighborhood revealed nothing. Security cameras near Max's route failed to capture anything unusual, and eyewitness accounts yielded no leads. A boy walking to school in a safe neighborhood. It was almost too clean. By noon, Max's father, Edward Carter, a successful tech entrepreneur, received an email. The subject line, "Your son." The email was unsettlingly direct. "We have Max follow instructions, or he dies. Transfer $2 million in cryptocurrency to the address below. You have 48 hours. Do not involve the police." Cryptocurrency was an obvious choice for professional criminals. It was fast, anonymous, and untraceable. The demand was steep but achievable, and there was no mention of proof of life. This felt calculated. While the Carters wrestled with fear, I saw the email as the first crack in the kidnapper's armor. If they were professional, they would make a mistake eventually, and that mistake would be our entry point. Kidnappings often originate close to home, so I took a hard look at the Carters themselves. Edward was a prominent figure in the tech industry, having built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up. Lisa, a former financial analyst, had left her job to focus on raising Max. They were wealthy but lived modestly for their means, and neither had enemies, legal battles, or public controversies. Still, wealth alone made them a target. Their financial history showed no recent withdrawals, unusual investments, or debts. If this was a random targeting, the ransom demands suggested the kidnappers had done their research. The Carters were devastated but cooperative. Their raw emotions, especially Lisa's anguish and Edward's barely concealed anger, were genuine. If this kidnapping had roots in the family's dynamics, it wasn't evident on the surface. Max's backpack was an enigma. Why leave it? The careful placement felt intentional, almost like a breadcrumb. The contents revealed nothing extraordinary. Textbooks, pencils, a half-eaten granola bar. But as I combed through his notebooks, I noticed a folded piece of blank paper tucked inside a page of equations. On the surface, it appeared meaningless. Yet knowing Max's brilliance, I couldn't ignore the possibility that he'd left it for a reason. The paper was sent to the lab for analysis, while I focused on the broader picture. The lack of struggle or disturbance suggested one of two things. Max had willingly gone with someone he trusted, or the abduction was executed with chilling precision. Max's school became my next focus. Teachers and classmates described him as quiet, brilliant, and self-contained. He had a small circle of friends, but his focus was on academics, particularly mathematics. One teacher mentioned that Max had recently been paired with an older student, Dylan, for a series of math competitions. Dylan was an anomaly. Described as charismatic but unpredictable, he had stopped attending school weeks earlier. Some said he'd fallen in with a rough crowd. Others hinted he'd been expelled but wouldn't elaborate. Dylan's connection to Max suddenly seemed more important. I obtained Dylan's last known address but found no trace of him there. Neighbors mentioned seeing him with an older man, a detail that would later prove pivotal. The lab results on the folded paper from Max's backpack came back that evening. Under UV light, faint indentations appeared. Marks left from someone writing on a sheet placed above it. The markings revealed a partial phone number and what appeared to be a series of numbers and symbols. The phone number was incomplete, but cross-referencing the visible digits with local burner phone purchases led to a match. A nearby gas station had recently sold a prepaid phone, and the surveillance footage showed a hooded figure buying it. While the image quality was poor, The figure's height and build aligned with Dylan. As for the numbers and symbols, I recognized them for what they were: coordinates. Max had left his first clue, a silent cry for help embedded in the only tool he had at his disposal. The decoded coordinates pointed to a location on the city's outskirts, an abandoned warehouse. The coordinates left by Max led to a desolate industrial area on the outskirts of the city. The warehouse in question had been abandoned for years, its windows shattered, and its walls covered in graffiti. It was the perfect place for a temporary hideout, remote, unguarded, and overlooked. I approached the scene cautiously, accompanied by a tactical team. The air was heavy with anticipation as we breached the main door. Inside, we found evidence of recent activity: empty food wrappers, a mattress, and a small, scattered pile of children's drawings. One of the drawings stood out: a stick figure family standing in front of a house, with one figure drawn smaller and isolated to the side. It was unmistakably Max's work. This confirmed he had been here, but the room was empty, and there were no immediate signs of where he had been taken next. We were close, but the trail wasn't over yet. Amid the clutter, I noticed something odd about the drawings. The isolated figure had been drawn with a series of marks around it, almost like a subtle outline of numbers. On closer inspection, I realized it was another encoded message, similar to the folded paper Max had left in his backpack. Decoding the numbers revealed another set of coordinates, but this time they pointed to a more rural area outside the city limits. Max was still leaving a trail, and while the kidnappers might not have noticed, it was clear he was working against the clock to guide us closer to him. Back in the city, we intensified our efforts to locate Dylan. The older boy who had been associated with Max. Tracking him wasn't easy. He had no fixed address, but word on the street suggested he'd been seen frequenting a rundown apartment complex. When we finally caught up with him, he was uncooperative at first. Under pressure, Dylan admitted he'd introduced Max to a man named Victor Hastings. Dylan described Victor as charming but manipulative, someone who could easily convince others to do his bidding. Dylan claimed he had been paid to lure Max into meeting Victor under the guise of a mentorship opportunity. However, he insisted he had no knowledge of the kidnapping plan. Whether this was the truth or a half-truth, it became clear Dylan was a link in the chain. While following Dylan's trail, the kidnappers sent another ransom email, this time including a video. Max appeared blindfolded in a poorly lit room, his voice trembling as he pleaded, "Mom, Dad, please do what they say." The video served two purposes: proof of life and psychological leverage. The room's faint humming sound and flickering fluorescent lights hinted at an industrial location, likely near active machinery. This small detail became a lead. The kidnappers also escalated their demands, shortening the deadline to 24 hours. Their urgency indicated they knew we were closing in, but the reduced timeline also meant Max's life was in greater danger. Dylan's description of Victor matched the profile of a known petty criminal with a history of fraud and extortion. Victor's last known associate was a tech-savvy partner known as Cypher, who specialized in digital crimes and encryption. This partnership explained the precision of the ransom demands and the kidnappers' ability to remain anonymous. Through cyberforensics, we traced one of Cypher's proxy servers to a low-budget motel on the outskirts of the city. Surveillance teams were dispatched to the motel, where we identified Victor leaving a room late at night carrying a duffel bag. His car's license plate, though registered under a fake name, provided a trail that led us deeper into their operation. Victor's arrest gave us access to a laptop inside the duffel bag. The laptop contained encrypted files, which our tech team worked around the clock to decrypt. Among the files, we found a GPS location for a remote cabin deep in the woods, far from any towns or roads. Drones confirmed activity at the cabin. A vehicle parked outside, lights on, and faint movement inside. A raid was carefully planned, balancing urgency with caution to ensure Max's safety. At dawn, the tactical team moved in. The raid was swift and precise. Victor's partner, Cypher, was taken into custody without resistance. In a locked back room, we found Max, disheveled but alive. His eyes filled with tears as he realized he was safe. The relief was overwhelming. After the raid, Max was brought to safety, where a medical team confirmed he was unharmed physically but visibly shaken. When I sat down to talk with him, His clarity and composure were astounding for someone so young. He described the events leading up to his abduction in precise detail, almost as if analyzing a problem he intended to solve. Max recounted how Victor approached him on his walk to school, claiming there was an emergency involving his parents. The story seemed plausible because Victor knew specific details about Max's family, details likely obtained through surveillance or research. Trusting the man, Max entered the car, where he was blindfolded and driven to the first location. From the start, Max realized he was in danger. His captors underestimated his intelligence, allowing him opportunities to observe their movements and environment. He explained how he left the folded paper in his backpack and encoded coordinates in the drawings at the warehouse. "I knew they wouldn't understand," Max said, "but I thought someone else would." Under interrogation, Victor Hastings revealed more than we expected. His initial plan had been to use Max's mathematical talents, exploiting his gift to bypass security algorithms and encryption systems for high-value financial heists. Victor admitted he had been watching Max for months, impressed by his ability to solve advanced problems. Cypher, the tech-savvy accomplice, had been the mastermind behind the ransom demand. When Max proved less cooperative than expected, the two pivoted to extortion, believing the Carter family's wealth would yield a quick payout. What made the situation even more chilling was Victor's admission that if the ransom failed, they intended to sell Max's abilities to other criminals in their network. It became clear that this wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a calculated scheme to turn a child into a tool for cybercrime. The laptop confiscated from Victor during the raid contained encrypted files that required days to crack. Once decrypted, the files revealed a sprawling network of cybercriminals involved in data breaches, identity theft, and financial scams. Cypher's meticulous records included plans for future operations and lists of targets, some of which included other children with unique skills. This discovery widened the scope of the case significantly. What started as a local kidnapping turned out to be part of a much larger criminal enterprise. Federal agencies launched parallel investigations to dismantle the network, with Victor and Cypher serving as key witnesses. Though Max had been physically unharmed, the psychological toll of the kidnapping became evident in the days following his rescue. He experienced nightmares, flashbacks, and feelings of guilt. Despite his remarkable intelligence, Max struggled to process the trauma emotionally. His parents, Lisa and Edward, sought the help of a specialized counselor who worked with gifted children in crisis. The sessions helped Max understand that he was not at fault for what had happened and that his quick thinking had likely saved his life. Over time, Max began to see himself not as a victim but as someone who had overcome extraordinary odds. Dylan, the older boy who had unwittingly facilitated Max's kidnapping, faced charges of aiding and abetting. However, during the investigation, his cooperation and remorse became apparent. He provided valuable details about Victor's behavior and connections, which proved instrumental in building a case against the kidnappers. As part of a plea deal, Dylan avoided jail time but was sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. Over the next year, he worked closely with local organizations focused on youth mentorship, hoping to atone for his mistakes. Victor Hastings and Cypher faced a litany of charges, including kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy to commit cybercrimes. The overwhelming evidence, combined with their confession, led to swift convictions. Victor received a 30-year prison sentence, while Cypher, who had orchestrated the digital aspects of the crime, was sentenced to 35 years. The intelligence recovered from Cypher's laptop led to dozens of arrests worldwide, effectively dismantling one of the most sophisticated cybercrime networks uncovered in recent years. The case became a landmark in cybercrime investigations, demonstrating how physical crimes and digital expertise could converge in terrifying ways. The rescue of Max Carter marked the end of an immediate nightmare, but the emotional and psychological ripples lingered. Lisa and Edward Carter, relieved to have their son back, began reassessing every aspect of their lives: security, routines, and the exposure that wealth and success had brought them. The family withdrew from public life, and even Max's schooling was adjusted to protect him from unnecessary attention. However, Max's ordeal left a mark. His confidence in people had been shaken, and for weeks, he remained hesitant to go outside alone. His parents worked closely with counselors to help him rebuild his sense of safety and autonomy. Lisa Carter turned her experience into action. She founded an organization called Silent Clues, dedicated to educating families about personal security, online safety, and resilience in the face of trauma. The initiative offered resources to parents, taught children how to identify and respond to danger, and raised awareness about the growing intersection of technology and crime. Edward Carter also shifted his focus. As a tech entrepreneur, he began advocating for enhanced cybersecurity measures, emphasizing the dangers posed by unchecked technology and the exploitation of talent, especially in younger populations. Despite the trauma, Max's resilience and determination shone through. Over time, he began to see his intelligence as a tool for positive change rather than a vulnerability. He resumed his studies with a renewed passion for mathematics and problem-solving, but his interests also shifted toward cybersecurity. Max became fascinated with understanding how his captors had operated and how he could prevent similar crimes from happening to others. Encouraged by his parents, Max joined a mentorship program where he met like-minded peers and professionals. These connections helped him channel his abilities toward constructive goals, turning a painful chapter of his life into a foundation for growth. The case was a watershed moment for law enforcement, particularly in understanding the intersection of physical and digital crime. The seamless use of cryptocurrency, encryption, and proxy servers demonstrated the sophistication of modern criminal networks. Interdisciplinary teams. Success required close collaboration between traditional investigators, cybersecurity experts, and federal agencies. Technological preparedness. Law enforcement agencies began investing in more advanced tools and training to combat tech-enabled crimes. Attention to detail. Small clues, such as Max's folded paper, reinforced the importance of treating even seemingly insignificant evidence as potentially pivotal. The lessons learned from this case informed future investigations and training programs. The intelligence recovered from Cypher's files had far-reaching consequences. Federal agencies used the data to dismantle a cybercrime network that spanned multiple countries, resulting in over 50 arrests. The network had been involved in everything from data breaches and identity theft to corporate espionage. Max's kidnapping had inadvertently exposed a global operation, making the case a cornerstone in the fight against cybercrime. Max's contributions to his own rescue didn't go unnoticed. His ability to leave subtle clues and think critically under extreme pressure earned him national recognition. While Max was initially reluctant to accept the spotlight, his parents encouraged him to share his story as a way of inspiring others. Max was honored at several events, where he met leaders in technology, law enforcement, and education. These experiences bolstered his confidence and opened doors for future opportunities in fields where his unique skills could make a difference. Years after the case, Max's story became a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and the power of small actions in the face of overwhelming odds. He went on to pursue a career in cybersecurity, dedicating himself to preventing the kinds of crimes that had once threatened his life. The Carters, while forever changed by the ordeal, found purpose in helping others. Their nonprofit, Silent Clues, grew into a nationwide initiative, providing education and resources to families and schools across the country. For me, this case remained one of the most rewarding and challenging of my career. It was a reminder of how even the smallest details, a folded piece of paper, a child's drawing, can lead to extraordinary breakthroughs. Max's courage and quick thinking turned a potentially tragic story into one of survival, growth, and hope. If you like this story and want to watch more stories by Detective Lefebre, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below. Remember, the truth is in details.